The 2022 first-year player draft is fully underway, and scouts abound are saying the Pirates made arguably the best pick of the first round in Termarr Johnson. They also pick up Thomas Harrington and Hunter Barco to cap what appears to be a winning night. Now, of course, we won't know for a while, but at first glance, it appears that the Pirates did very well. We're also going to talk about the first half of the season for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the trade deadline is looming here at the All-Star break. So the Pittsburgh Pirates have a lot going on and a lot to think about over the next couple of days as the draft carries on. I am your host who does the most here at the Locked On Pirates podcast, Ethan Smith. Gary Morgan, of course, will be joining me today, as he always does every single Monday. But before we get into today's episode, thank you for making me your first listen of the day every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is also brought to you by Blue Nile. More on them later. And with that said, let's get into today's episode on Monday, July 18th.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to that Pirates podcast, everybody. I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith, who does the most. As, of course, this is the first full episode of almost fully furnished Wall, Ethan, in his new place. As you see, the Pirates flag, everything in between me. Gary, of course, was in San Francisco last week. He is back home now. So, of course, the Pirates decor behind us is going crazy. And it's All-Star break time. Feels like it kind of sneaked up on us in a way. As I mentioned to you before, I didn't realize the trade deadline was 2 weeks away, and I didn't realize we were in the second half of July already, but here we are. Home run derby tonight, All-Star game tomorrow. But the Pirates, more importantly, yesterday, Gary, appeared to have yet another strong start to a draft under Ben Harrington with Termarr Johnson, who I called the King of Tomorrow. That's what I'm already coining him. But, of course, with these drafts, it's always hard to say if it was a win or not because we don't even know what these guys are going to pan out to be for about 3 or 4 years. But at a glance, what do we like, what do we not like about the Termarr Johnson pick?
I mean, there's not a lot to dislike about the Termarr Johnson pick. If you're one of the people that thought the draft pick this year was going to be the final piece of the rebuild, as I've heard people put, first of all, it's misguided foolishness to think that way. Second, he's a high school kid, so he's not going to be here for a while. You know, this is probably 4, maybe even 5 years down the road when you get him up here, and as it should be. I mean, he's 17 years old, so like, it is what it is, man. I think that nationally he was seen as probably, at least in the conversation, for the top hitter available in the draft, and I like that. He's pretty evolved, actually, with his bat. Glove, I have some questions about, like, if he doesn't make it at second, I worry about him really being a fielder. He doesn't have the arm strength to really move to shortstop or third base, in my opinion. He could always prove us wrong. I mean, Kevin Newman had the same exact comp as far as like not being able to stick at shortstop because of his arm strength, and I think he kind of proved that to be the wrong perception. So there's that.
Yeah, and that was the interesting thing yesterday, of course, being interviewed, his first presser and everything, saying the Pirates got the best player in the draft. He wants to come and win rings. Personality-wise, he hugs everybody, he talks to everybody, he high-fives everybody. He's honestly a guy who seems like he's going to be, like, if he does end up being good, he's going to be a face, just because of how out there he is. And it's very funny to see the polar opposites of last year's first-round pick, Henry Davis, to this year with Termarr Johnson and their personalities. Like, Henry Davis was kind of like, oh, I'm the quiet guy, but I'm still going to come in and produce and do my thing. And Termarr Johnson's out here talking about winning rings and loving Pittsburgh and wanting to sign, like, immediately, which you love to see. And I thought it was interesting. Now, I did see some people have concerns about his size, being only 5'10", which apparently is generous, according to most scouts that I saw say that was a generous height profile. But I've also seen some scouts say that he already has maxed out in terms of his physicality. Apparently, that's just what he's going to be. And when I also hear 25 to 30 home run guy, you'll take that any day of the week. Now, of course, it's so hard to talk about this because you just don't know yet. You're not going to know what this kid's going to be like. You don't know what he's going to struggle with yet. I mean, people were quoting Bubba Chandler, Shohei Ohtani already because he's pitched a couple scoreless innings in Bradenton and is hitting the ball over 300 down there in Single A. All cool stuff, but I'm also here to tell you right now, Bubba Chandler more than likely is going to be a pitcher. I'm just going to let you know that right now. That's just probably how the Pirates are going to move forward with him because it is way too difficult to learn two positions, let alone one. But then you also look at the other two selections that they made. Thomas Harrington, apparently his best pitch is a mid-80s changeup. Very good fastball changeup combination out of Campbell. Played with Zach Neto, who Pirates fans were shaking in their boots, hoping they weren't going to take it for because he hung out with the team last week. And then Hunter Barco, who was the 2019 top-rated left-handed arm in the entire draft before he went to Florida and is recovering from Tommy John. So if you had to just give an initial draft grade or draft summary for what the Pirates did last night, where would you sit in terms of how they did initially, right as we know what we know?
I mean, well, first pick, you have to just take the best player available. And in this draft this year, despite the Texas Rangers jumping up and grabbing Kumar Rocker at number 3 overall, it was not on the mound. So, I'm glad they didn't reach for a pitcher, even though organizationally they really need them. They just took best player available, at least in their eyes. I mean, who knows? The best player available could be somebody else, but that's who they had top of their board. Glad they went and picked him. As far as the pitchers go, Harrington, I think he's probably more of a proven commodity type player. I think he will probably come up in a routine fashion, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. I don't think the top of the mountain is that high for him. Barco, it's a crapshoot, but it's not unlike what the Steelers did with George Pickens. You take somebody who's injured, whose draft stock has potentially fallen a little bit because of that, and you eat the fact that he's really not going to pitch for you till next year, and that's when you get him started. And at his age, they're going to want to get him started pretty quick, and you hope he's a fast riser once he does. But all in all, good talent. They need to focus on arms the rest of the way, so I'd give them at least a B.
Yeah, and that was what I was going to suggest too. Is I was going to ask you what you think they should do the rest of the way, and I agree 100%. I think now that you've went, I'm assuming they probably went underslot on the second and third pick. Johnson, I don't know if we heard anything about over or under, but I would assume it's probably his slot value or even a little bit higher. Who knows? I haven't seen it yet. If it's something that came out already, then I'm sorry for everybody listening. But I would expect them now go after those overslot high school arms that fell. The one name that was getting very interesting that I thought the Pirates might have a shot at, but he did end up getting taken, I think, was Dylan Lesko. I was like, Lesko's falling a lot, and there was reasons for it, but yeah. I think that kid has a chance to be arguably the best pitcher in this draft. It was just a matter of the injuries and the overslot value request, which always is the funny part about when people who don't really know the MLB draft are like, why is this guy like so good but falling? And then you have to explain over and under slot values, and I think it's great. But Fun note on the Texas Rangers pick. I was live with Lindsey Crosby while that happened, and we were just like, oh, okay, this is weird. Then you find out they get him under slot, and then forget the fact that him and Jack Leiter are going to be in the same rotation now. And I'm like, wow, that's an interesting dynamic they got going on in Texas. We'll see how that works out for them. But before we get into stuff about the first half of the season, wanted to talk to you guys about Blue Nile. Of course, Blue Nile, great for jewelry. It's one of those places you always need to go if you're ready to pop the question or you're just celebrating a milestone moment. You can find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has simple online tools that let you choose a diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft her perfect engagement ring. Each ring, of course, is one of a kind. Looking for jewelry that's fine, but having trouble choosing, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and going on now is the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale. Save up to 40% on classic fine jewelry pieces and 25% on engagement ring settings. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. So shop stress-free and find your forever piece and go to BlueNile.com today. The Pirates, of course, win yesterday 8-3 in probably the most janky ninth inning you'll ever watch this year. I don't know what was going on that ninth inning. The umpire steps out to tell the Rockies pitcher Estevez to stop complaining about strike calls. Don't see that too often. Chavis gets the line out double play to end the game. I was like, okay, we're off the clouds here. The other fun note from yesterday that I tweeted out: every hitter, including Cal Mitchell, who came on and scored a run in his one at bat, had a hit yesterday. Albeit O'Neal Cruz had 4 strikeouts, which was the main talk of the town the whole game yesterday. 6 pitchers combined for 3 earned runs. So they're 39-54 going into the break. Is this where we expected them to be? Like, is this where we expected the Pirates to be, or are they kind of playing a little over themselves, a little under where we expected them to be? Where do you put the Pirates right now in terms of expectations and where they were?
I picked 70 wins, and I think they're on pace for 69. So, pretty expected. I mean, I don't really know what else to say, man. There hasn't been too much this season that surprised me, except for calling guys up a little earlier than I thought they might start. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm a little surprised to see them stubbornly hold on to some of these veterans that clearly got outplayed by rookies.
Yeah, the Yoshi Tsutsugo, Josh Van Meter thing, I think, is just... it's very confusing. I don't want to say it's stupid, but it is. I just don't want to say the organization is being that way because I try to be nice. But there's just literally no benefit to having either guys on the roster anymore. There isn't.
No,
Kevin Newman at this point for Van Meter, Kevin Newman's playing well. I don't care about, when you're listening to this podcast, I don't care about the complaining on Twitter about Kevin Newman. He's not that good, blah, blah, blah. Right now, the guy's producing. His OPS is good, and he's playing good defense. He's already outplaying Josh Van Meter 10 times over in the little amount of time he's been here. I mean, yesterday, you look at what he did. He went 3 for 6 with 2 RBIs. He's batting .273. He's playing good defense at second base. Cruz is playing fine at shortstop. It's a dynamic that's working. If they keep Kevin Newman at this point, I wouldn't be mad based off the way he's currently playing. But that also goes back to the idea that we're talking about. Josh Van Meter does not need to be here. Yoshi Tsutsugo does not need to be here. I would rather just see Chavis and Madris go back and forth. I know Madris, I don't think, is on the MLB roster at the moment, correct? I think he got sent back down. If he gets called back up when Tsutsugo's DFA'd, I don't think anybody would be mad with a Chavis-Madris platoon over at first base. It's better than what we're seeing there, because I literally saw somebody say this, I think it was Jim Rosati on Twitter, said, worthless would even be more worth than Yoshi Tsutsugo is right now. And it's just, yeah, I remember, Gary, all year you said 4 million reasons why he's still here, but at what point do you just eat that money and say, dude, you can't play here anymore?
Well, for me, that was before he came back from the IL. I mean, like, I never would have brought him back from the IL. By the time he was healthy, if you believe that he was injured, by the time he came back healthy, that ship had sailed already.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough time left for him to do enough to be a valuable trade asset.
No.
And there's really no reason to think that they should keep him all year trying to get something out of him. He has literally done nothing but been an anchor in the middle of the lineup. And I don't mean anchor in a good way, like it's holding you steady. I mean anchor like it's preventing you from doing things. It's stopping the offense dead in its tracks.
Yeah, I agree. Now, one dynamic I want to get into that I think is fun is another friend of Gary and I's that we love to talk about. Also, I think should be on the way out at this point because Jason DeLay has emerged on the scene a little bit as a pretty solid catcher for the last couple of weeks. You also have Tyler Heineman playing decent as well. Both of those guys are better than Michael Perez.
Yeah,
Like,
so they already optioned Michael Perez because of it. Exactly.
I probably missed that yesterday.
It doesn't take very much to beat him out, and Jason DeLay did it, and nobody expected him to contribute anything. And just to show how weak it was, he literally had, I think, about 15 at bats, and because he got 3 or 4 hits, it was enough to say that's enough.
Which I did think I did hear at the MLB draft yesterday. They were showing first half highlights, and Michael Perez was in the video package for his 3 home run game that he had.
He'll always have that, man.
Yep.
And like the thing with Michael Perez that's really frustrating. The dude does have a pretty sweet looking swing when he connects. He just doesn't connect very often. I mean, and it's, he's always swinging for that 425-foot bomb as opposed to just trying to get on base or whatever. I don't know. It's just not happening. I'm glad they pulled the trigger and left Jason DeLay up here. It doesn't really matter if you think about it.
We already know who's playing catcher in the foreseeable future, I think.
Sure we do. Right. But, I mean, you need some pieces here, and if DeLay's one of them or Heineman's one of them, and you don't need to go and get another backup on top of the starter you have to go get next year, fine. But, I mean, it's hard for me to get real excited about the catching position. They've just been throwing crap at the wall, and this is what stuck.
Yeah.
2 guys that absolutely nobody counted on to be on a major league team at all are our starter and backup catcher.
Yeah, and then you still have, but I'm liking this now to get more into this catcher dynamic because now I know that it's still not great. It's not ideal. But at least now you don't have to worry about putting Michael Perez out there. Heineman and DeLay are doing fine. I would say Heineman being a switch hitter, I think he'll see more time against lefties or righties. DeLay being a righty, I think DeLay is a righty, correct? Am I just losing my mind today?
I mean, if they ever face a righty again, they've been facing lefties.
Yeah, they just face lefties like all the time, which I'm not surprised. I mean, if I was a team, I would just call up every single lefty I have in my system and face the Pirates because they have like 6 lefty bats in their lineup. But, I mean, you even still have the dynamic that Jamie Ritchie is even a guy that maybe around September call-ups, you could even bring him up and give him a little bit of a shot. I know people wanted to see that. But it doesn't feel like now at the catcher position like it did earlier when Roberto Perez got hurt where it felt like a lost cause. Like it feels like, okay, it's not – we're not at Asgard yet. We're not in Thor Ragnarok. We're not at Asgard yet. But
it sounds to me like somebody – maybe the host of this show has lowered their expectations a little bit about what, and I get it, they forced it on you, but
lowering expectations about the catcher position, not about
the catcher position. In all sincerity, I'm happy these 2 guys are serviceable and seem to be decent guys. They catch a good game. They'll pop out the occasional hit every now and then. I don't think either of them are spectacular at anything. Meaning, I don't think either of them. Well, maybe Heineman with magic. He's really good at magic, apparently.
Yeah, I heard that on the broadcast. It was like, oh yeah, he's a magician on the side. I was like, oh god, here we go.
But I don't think either of them are particularly good at defense. I don't think either of them are particularly, owners of like killer arms. I don't think either of them are gonna go on a 350 tear and take over the offense for a week.
No.
In fact, I kind of would be surprised if either of them can even pop a home run, let alone go on a little run. They're both Judy hitting catchers. That's what they are, and that's okay. You can have that.
Hey,
And
it's
it
always better
certainly
than
is an
having Josh
upgrade
Van
over a
Meter.
strikeout machine.
It's always better than having Josh Van Meter catch a couple innings, right?
Yep.
Never forget that. But, of course, before we get into what me and Gary want to see in the second half as well at the trade deadline, go to betonline.ag tonight. This is actually cool. Ethan did not know that he could actually do the ticker and this at the same time on YouTube. That's pretty dope, but we're not going to do that. BetOnline, of course, that's where the game starts. You can bet on the Home Run Derby tonight. A lot of people betting on Pete Alonso to win because this is his event at this point. It's just everybody else shows up. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's Major League Baseball All-Star break, the second half of the season, and pretty soon football. We're actually a lot closer to football than I think people think. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your best sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Shout out to Cam Smith, notable Penguins fan, on winning at St. Andrews yesterday. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action, and BetOnline is where the game starts. Also, which NFL stars move the betting line the most? Starting July 18th, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. All right. So the second half is officially upon us. I think that's pretty clear. And the Marlins are what await them when they come back on Friday. But as you mentioned to me, trade deadline a little bit over a week away. But as I've said over the last week or so, I don't expect the Pirates to go crazy this trade deadline. I really don't. I don't think they're going to do as much as people think they might. I think the trade pieces are pretty clear on who they are, but I don't think they're going to cut bait with a lot of these guys. So where are you standing on how you think they're going to do with the trade deadline?
I think there's a lot of guys that they would trade. Unfortunately, those aren't guys that people want.
Yeah.
So, I think there could be a market for Kevin Newman. I do. I wouldn't be upset if they kept him. I wouldn't be upset if they traded him. I'd understand it either way. I think he'll be traded soon thereafter if he's not, because I don't think that he's to the point where they'll non-tender him next year. He's done enough to not let him walk away for nothing. But they'd probably like to avoid that question entirely and just move him at this deadline if they could. I'm just not sure if there's enough time for anything to come together.
Yeah.
Quintana is a surefire going to be traded guy. I bet they'd love somebody to take Chris Stratton. I don't know that they'll find somebody. He's really had a pretty poor season, I think. Yeah, we'll see. Relievers are always a hot commodity. You could see somebody coming after somebody like Dwayne Underwood or something like that. Somebody you're not thinking about. Even Will Crow, you could see somebody coming after somebody like that. it wouldn't be in the character of the Pirates to trade somebody with like 4 or 5 years of control left, but you could, if you really wanted to. If somebody offered a decent package for Will Crow, you'd probably pull the trigger on that. Prefer them not to, but Bryce Wilson could be Will Crow next year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
you just replace Crow with Wilson and then add like 2 prospects. I see what you're saying.
yeah. So I mean, they could do something like that. But as far as like a big trade deadline, no, you're not going to see a Reynolds. You're not going to see a Bednar. You're not going to see. You're not going to see anything. I think that's going to shake your world.
And also, it feels like an underwhelming trade deadline just around baseball. Honestly, in my opinion, you have like the top guys like Castillo, Benintendi, Montes. Other than that, though, I mean, it doesn't feel like it's a trade deadline that's crazy. Which I remember a while back during the CBA, when we talked about them expanding the playoff, we said that could probably affect how the trade deadline works. Because there's just so many teams right now that are still in the mold. Like if you go to the American League, Tampa Bay, Seattle, and Toronto are your wild cards, but then Boston, Cleveland, Baltimore, and Chicago are 4 games within them. All those teams are not going to sit there and cut bait with guys just because they're 4 games out of the wild card. Same thing with the National League. It's a little different. There's 5 teams because there's a big drop-off between the Giants and everybody else, who the Giants are a half game back, but there's almost damn near a 3-way tie for the National League wild card. But I think it's pretty obvious who the sellers are. Washington's a seller, and they should trade Josh Bell. There's no reason they shouldn't trade Josh Bell at this point. Cincinnati's a seller. Chicago is a seller. I wouldn't go as far as saying the Pirates are a seller, though. Just because they're trading Quintana, I don't think that makes them a seller. I think that's just saying, okay, we're trading a veteran guy on an expiring deal.
Yeah, I mean, like if they were in the race, they might not be trading Quintana. So that's why you call him a seller. Nationals are interesting because of Soto. If they pull off a Soto deal this year, first, I can't even imagine the decimation of somebody's system that would do. Just they would have to be asking for a package that just would blow your mind. So I just can't see a whole lot of teams that even have that. We talk about teams struggling to come up with enough for Brian Reynolds.
Yeah, imagine Juan Soto.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting to watch that develop. I mean, Tampa Bay is talking about trading some of their pitching, even though they're there where they are. I could see something like that materialize and kind of surprise some people. Don't be caught off guard if the Twins decide to trade Correa. That's why they brought him in. He's basically buying a free trade chip. They're going to give him some money this year. They've got him for a couple years, but they're all option years. So, if they wanted to move him, they could do that. And there could easily be a team that could use his services, right? And that could transform where the Twins are going with their rebuild, too. So,
agreed. And also, with the Soto thing, too, you were saying this year, I think if it happens this year, it's going to happen after the season ends because you put it right on the nose. A team is going to have to rip apart their farm system to even get them to talk to Soto, about Soto. So doing that in the middle of the year, I think that's just way too much movement going on in a farm system, in my opinion, to make that kind of move, to make it in season. Now, could I expect it in the off season and winter meetings and stuff like that? Oh, for sure. I think that's when it's going to happen. But you really have to also keep in mind, we talk about the amount of prospects it's going to take, but also somebody has to pay the guy. Not too many teams in baseball can pay the guy.
Well, to trade for him, you don't necessarily have to pay the guy. I know what you're talking about. He's going to get that $500,000 contract.
Oh, yeah, he is, 100%.
But that's not coming this off season.
No.
So, You basically would be paying for a couple years of arbitration. You're right. His eventual landing spot is preordained. We already know where he's going to go. There's only a couple teams that can do it. So, I mean, like, pinstripes or blue. I mean, which one do you think it's going to be?
It's just
maybe the Mets. I
yeah,
mean, like
yeah. It's interesting because the Yankees, I hear, are interested in it. The Yankees have the farm system to do it. They really
if the
do.
Yankees lose Judge, I bet they get it done.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But that was what I was going to get into. Is do you pull the trigger on something like that and just basically, at that point, Aaron Judge is going to want his money too. And it's like, do you wait for Aaron Judge to make that decision? Because here's the thing too. The Nationals can wait. They really can. I mean, it's not like they can't wait on Juan Soto. I mean, nothing's forcing their hand at trading him. It's just at some point they're going to have to because I don't think they're going to be able to pay him. Which I also love that as we wrap up about people saying Peguero and Nick Gonzalez are shaking because of Termarr Johnson. I like the idea that everybody said Elijah Green was drafted last night to have the same dynamic that Harper and Soto had when Harper went to free agency and went to Philly, and then Soto emerged from him. People are saying Soto's going to leave, and then Elijah Green will emerge from him. I think it's hilarious. The draft is great. Gary, this was a great episode talking about all that stuff. What do you expect from the rest of the draft? What do you expect from All-Star, Home Run Derby, All-Star Game, all that stuff? What do you expect from that stuff?
I expect the All-Star Game to be as boring and I guess annoying as it normally is. It's not a real baseball game. They make it painfully obvious it's not a real baseball game. And I just haven't enjoyed it in years and years and years. I don't really care if David Bednar gets in. The Pirate fan in me would prefer he doesn't, because I kind of didn't want him to get into our last game. As far as the Home Run Derby, I don't care. And the best home run hitters in the country aren't playing in it because they don't want to screw up their swings.
Yep.
And we've only heard that about 5 years running now. So at some point, Major League Baseball will catch on and realize that players no longer want to participate in it, and it's time to change things up a little bit. As far as the second half of the season, more pitching. I think they're going to focus on pitching as much as possible. A lot of those high school prep arms and whatnot, I think you'll see. And I hope they just load up on that, because that's what they need more than anything in the world.
Yep, they do. And I'll be back tomorrow covering all of that as the draft carries on today. I forget what time. I think it starts at noon. I think it's noon to 8. I don't know. There's so many rounds. I always forget with the MLB draft. I kind of just turn it on, and then I'm like, okay, we're in round 13. Let's see what happens here. But Pirates got Lonnie White Jr. last year in a very late round. So sometimes, most of the time, these drafts are won and lost in the later rounds. So we'll see what happens. This is Gary Morgan and Ethan Smith signing off here on July 18th, 2022. Gary, of course, will have his 5 Thoughts at 5 up today at Bucks in the Basement. We know that's a thing already. But with that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This was a fun episode to do post round 1 and comp and round 2 draft time. And I will see you guys on the flip side.